Hello, and welcome to another edition of Interviewing the Legends, brought to you by the Publicity Works Agency, devoted to promoting musicians and authors worldwide. Call us today at 941-877-1552 to start your free publicity evaluation. Remember, we shine only when we make you shine. Please welcome the host of Interviewing the Legends, music journalist, author, and entrepreneur, Ray Shasho.
Once again, everyone, I'm your host, Ray Shasho. Welcome to another edition of Interviewing the Legends, brought to you by the Publicity Works Agency. Call us today at 941-877-1552, or email us at publicityworksagency.com. Remember, we shine only when we make you shine. At 15, Sonja Kristina was studying drama while sharing a billing with such luminaries as Sandy Denny, Al Stewart, and Buffy St. Marie. Sonja, a barefoot hippie wild child whose friends in the late 60s were radical revolutionaries, Hell's Angels, writers and poets, and celebrated musicians, played Chrissie in the original London cast of Hair in 1968. In 1970, Sonja Kristina became the voice of Curved Air. Curved Air soon became renowned for their virtuosity and thrilling shows. Their albums were top 20 bestsellers, as was the single hit Back Street Luv. The influential original members were electric violinist Darryl Way, electronica pioneer and guitarist, keyboard player Francis Monkman, and drummer Florian Pilkington Miksa. From 1970 to the present day, Sonja Kristina has been the one constant member of Curved Air. 1973, 17-year-old Eddie Jobson, who also played in Roxy Music, and Frank Zappa replaced both Monkman and Way during the Air Cut era. In 74 through 76, Stewart Copeland came straight from college to critical acclaim as Curved Air's drummer. At the end of 76, Curved Air broke up, and Sonja had a ringside seat at the birth of punk and the astronomic rise of Stewart's band, The Police, during Sonja and Stewart's 16-year relationship. By 1989, Sonja Kristina reinvented folk rock with a fiery brand of music she dubbed acid folk. Curved Air's violinist Paul Sachs and keyboard player Robert Norton toured with Sonja's acid folk band until 1996, playing Glastonbury and other festivals year after year. Since 2000, Sonja has been working with composer, producer, cellist, violinist Marvin Ayers, known for his unique manipulation of sound textures and audio-visual installations. You have two releases as Mask, Heavy Pedal, The Tenebrous Odyssey of Jack in Virginia, and Technopia. Marvin Ayers produced the 2012 Curved Air Live Atmosphere CD. The constant flame leading Curved Air through the decades, Sonja Kristina's hypnotic attraction endures today, vibrant and edgy as ever. Sonja, the original prog diva, gives a charismatic and highly visual performance, looking like a glamorous gypsy queen with her flowing red hair and dressed in sparkly black. That signature voice is still smoky and seductive as she spins around the stage around the excellent musicians who are Curved Air. Please welcome to Interviewing the Legends, English singer, songwriter, musician, and actress, best known for starring in the seminal 1960s musical Hair, and for being the lead vocalist of the 1970s progressive rock band Curved Air, Sonja Kristina. Hello, Sonja.
Hello.
You know, you would be perfect in Game of Thrones.
I would. Yeah. I like all the costumes they wear and everything. I like that look. I'll go with that. Yeah.
You'll go with that. Are you a fan of the show?
I've watched a few episodes. I'm not I binge watch other things. I like Mr. Robot and Black Mirror. They were the series that really got me.
I always thought of you. I always thought of you and Annie Haslam and Ian Anderson. You three would make great performances
Music?
in that movie, in that show, Game of Thrones. You guys would be perfect. Even just your music itself would be perfect.
Okay, well, if you set us up for that sounds like a really good.
Well, unfortunately, I think they're on the last season, so maybe on the second time around. By the way, Annie Haslam gives her love to you. Just talk to her, and she's going to be on the show next week. So she gives you her best.
Well, give mine back to her too. We had a really nice tour together in the UK, and it was last year, I think, or the year before.
Who were some of the music artists that inspired you? I know you were a big Dusty Springfield fan, correct?
Yeah, when in the sort of early 60s, whenever she was, I first noticed her when she was in the Springfields, and then I kind of followed her career, and there was nobody else as powerful as her, sort of in the English pop scene at the time. But I mean, I just really liked her presence and her voice, and she just seemed to have a big audience amongst young people, and we brought the sound of Motown and soul and all those things. She was one of the people who brought that to the British audience.
Another great artist was Petula Clark, but I've talked to Petula, and she says the same thing about Dusty, that she really admired her, and she was I guess a good friend as well. Yeah. Yes. So I think she was iconic. Had an iconic look. Her smoky dark eyes and with and her beehive. Yeah. Well, when did you first realize that you could sing? I mean, some people start out and they can't sing at all, and then they evolve into it. But how was that with you? I mean, did you know at an early age that you were a singer? Well, I mean, fairly early. But I remember my grandmother, who was a Swedish actress. Mm-hmm. And she used to say, when I sang, she said, "Oh, too much breath," when I was a little girl, and then I didn't sort of pay much attention to it, but that's something that I remember. But I remember singing in a school carol concert when I must have been about 8 or 9 or something. And I sang a verse of the Holly and the Ivy, and there were sort of appreciative noises coming from the audience there, just one verse, and I enjoyed that. That was the first time I sang in public, I think. So you knew early on that you did have a good voice, and you didn't really have to. You didn't take lessons or anything like that as a child. You just had natural ability, I guess. I did do poetry. Mm-hmm. What they call in England elocution things when I was also sort of pre-7, and I did some poetry speaking competitions. So when you learn a poem, and then everybody takes turns to do their recitations and things, and I did very well with that. I won a couple of those, and I enjoyed that because I just enjoyed the feeling of putting what was into my head into other people's heads, sort of just imagining into the silence with my words, if that makes any sense. Sure. I remember the old days when beatniks first came out. I guess beatniks were the first hippies, and they used to have the little cafes, and they used to, people would just walk up there and do their thing, and a lot of times their backs to the audience. And the bongos. Yeah. Well, I did that. I did exactly that in 1967 when I came to London, and I was going to
proper drama college, and I had the chance of running a Wednesday evening event at a regular event at the Troubadour, the famous Troubadour Club in Earl's Court, and there were two Red Sullivan and Martin Windsor. They normally ran it, but they were going away, so I said, I can run it for you whilst you're away. And so that turned into a real sort of hippie extravaganza. There was this tiny little intimate club, but we had a light show and we had bongo battles and we had poets reading with their back to the audience, just as you said. And Dave Cousins from the Strawbs, he was a friend of mine who came and sang down there, and Al Stewart as well. And I did my little sort of, my funny little kind of hippie ditties and melodramas, melodramatic songs. Well, I mean, they seem melodramatic to me now, but they were kind of, I don't know, sort of doleful then, I guess.
Did you play the bongos too while you were reciting, or?
No. I was singing. I was playing guitar and singing.
Okay.
I mean, it was like we still had the music element, but we added the poetry and various other instruments and the visuals and things as well. And it was very serendipitous. People would turn up, who would be really good for the evening. The lighting people I met on the Underground. I talked to somebody next to me and said, "You don't happen to do lights, do you?" And he did. So he came and did our lights for us. Yeah.
You're an excellent guitar player. I mean, your picking is awesome, by the way. And
my finger.
So sometimes I think that's overlooked because of your beautiful voice.
Yeah. Well, when I was I played folk clubs from 13 till, and right up until after Hair. When I was in Curved Air, I played guitar with on Melinda, but that wasn't until the third album. But I can't remember what it's called. It'll come back to me. The finger pecking thing. I keep thinking crawdaddy, but that's not the right thing for it. There's a term for it. Do you know what it is? We goes down decka 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 dang decka decka decka. There's a name for that kind of picking. I'm getting old and words disappear when
is that like the Chet Atkins type picking, or?
Yeah, it was more like John Renbourn and Davy Graham. Okay. They were the ones that everybody learned it from. So, and that was, I remember people teaching me that, and spending hours practicing it, and it became sort of the basic, the basic accompaniment style, the basis for the kind of singer-songwriter backings and things. I'm sure Sandy Denny did that style as well.
Yep, Melinda's probably one of my favorite songs. That's a beautiful song, and it really highlights your guitar playing. And your voice, both of them. It's a beautiful song. I really love it.
Thank you.
You met some pretty interesting people back in the early days. One of them was Donovan, who I've been trying to get on the show for a long, long time, but haven't had any success. I love Donovan. I think when he first came out, he was so cool. Everybody throwing flowers at him, and him sitting in the middle, kind of in the yoga position. And you also knew Brian Jones. What was Brian like? Not too many people talk about, what he was like and his personality and everything.
Well, I just had a very, very short, period of time. I met him down at the Speakeasy, and we got chatting, and he was just very laid back and kind of, and a bit out of it. And we went back to his. He was with a group of other people, and his manager at the time, I can't remember all the names now, but we drove back to his apartment, which was in Chelsea, and he was very anxious when he was in the car, because for some reason he said that he was just he couldn't drive anymore. He was scared of driving. I wasn't quite sure what had happened to make him scared of driving. But then we went back to his place, and he was on and off of the phone listening to the mixes from the studio, which was like, I think, of Satanic Majesties they were recording.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And he was playing the recordings from Jujuka. He'd just come back from Jujuka and from wherever from meeting the master musicians who he immortalized on that album, and that was really interesting because that was all very new, and he was very excited about that. And so I mean, he was chatty and very into the projects that he was doing, into the Satanic Majesties, what became Satanic Majesties and things, I found him, he was nice. What he in that company, he was kind of laid back and very very sweet.
He was kind of like I don't know, maybe like the George Harrison of the Stones. He played the sitar, and he was a great artist. He really was.
Multi-instrumental. He could play. Yeah. He could make music on anything.
Yeah.
I hung out with him for a little while, but then I was at college and things, so I didn't have that much time, and he was away a lot, and time went on.
Did you know any of the Beatles?
No, they all came to. No, it was the Rolling Stones. All the Rolling Stones, I think. Mick Jagger and I remember in particular came to Hair. I met Paul McCartney at a gallery when Linda was having it was a gallery for Linda's photographs.
Right. And
I bought a beautiful photograph of John Lennon that she'd had taken. I love John Lennon's work. He's an artist that can really move me. Very early on, more than the rest of the Beatles. In the beginning, I wasn't. When I was 15, 16. You were either a Beatles or a Stones fan. I was definitely a Stones. But I grew to like the Beatles. But I was saying that I met Paul McCartney and Linda, and I was living. Stewart and I had a house in the countryside with fields, and local farmers grazed their sheep there, and so in this art gallery, Paul and Linda and I were talking about sheep, about grazing sheep on your land. I remember that. That was the only time that I've met a Beatle, but it was nice. That was an unusual subject to talk about, I think.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to interview Julian. So, the only Beatles I got close to was Julian, Pete Best, and Peter Asher. I had to talk to Peter Asher. He's a good guy. But Julian he's such a nice guy, and I love his music. He should have probably been a lot more famous than he was.
Julian Lennon?
Yeah, Julian. Yep.
Yeah. I follow him on Facebook. He puts some lovely stuff up on Facebook.
Yeah, he takes some great photography as well. He's a very, very good picture taker. He tends a lot of his art gallery. He's got a lot of art showings and things like that. And he's big on the Lupus Foundation as well. He's very big. He's got a lot of causes. He's a good guy. He really is.
The White Feather, which is for indigenous.
White Feather, right?
I've just remembered the name of that picking style. It's called clawhammer.
Oh, clawhammer. Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I was thinking crawdaddy. It sounds similar, but no, it was clawhammer.
Yeah.
The clawhammer picking style. That's what I do with Melinda. Okay, where were we?
Talking about Julian, I guess.
Yeah.
But he's a good guy. Love his music. I've always loved his music, and talking to him on the phone is just like talking to John. It's amazing. They really sound a lot alike.
Yeah, it was similar.
Yeah. I chatted with Darryl Way, another great guy. We went over when he released Children of the Cosmos, and I did a review of that. Did you and Darryl still talk back and forth, or working on anything?
Well, we worked together in 2008,
right?
And that was good then. So getting the show back together and things, and then when it came to doing, we were trying to write new material together, but we just couldn't see eye to eye on that. And then he got tired of touring, so he doesn't like to sort of to go on long tours and things, and I love it. So since then I haven't really. I don't know if I've. I don't think I've. Oh no, yes, we did our 45th anniversary with the current lineup with Paul Sachs and Robert Norton, and Francis was too anxious. He didn't join us for that. Florian was already playing drums with us, and so Darryl and Paul and the current Darryl and Paul Sachs, they played together for the encores of our show. We did we played the whole of Air Conditioning, not before Darryl came on, but with the band we played Air Conditioning, and then Darryl came on and played, and Ian Eyre, who was our actually second best bass player, but he also came on and played for Back Street Luv, and Darryl and him and the entire current band played together. So that's the last time I saw Darryl, and yes, that was really nice. He was very, very charming and mellow, and he really liked what we were doing, which was a relief. He did what we were doing his work justice.
Yeah, you guys make a good team. He's an incredible violinist, and love his style.
Yes, it's very, very sweet.
Yeah. And he's put out some very good solo albums as well. He really has. North Star, that was your most recent album that had some new material on it. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes,
it was.
Yeah.
We did it all. It was composed. We all worked with the the lineup that sort of evolved from when Darryl and I got together in 2008. We've carried on, and a couple of members have come and gone and come back again, but everybody in the band, it was very collaborative. People came up with different ideas, and we evolved them together, and it was a very intense time, because they live all over the country, and they have to travel a long way, and we had to put them up together so that we could work on things together. And it was intense. It got quite heated, but I think we came out with an excellent album. And by the end, it was just so, everybody was. It was so it was so democratic. Nobody did anything. When we were mixing it, they made absolutely certain that everybody was happy with the way that their lines, their with what they played and how it sounded and things like that. So I've never had that experience before in the studio, apart from with the first Acid Folk album, and that was good fun to record, and that was even though it was my album as opposed to everybody's album, but it did, we did work very collaboratively on that as well. But so with North Star, I'm really, really proud of it, and I think it's that the songs from the Acid Folk, Air Conditioning, Aircut, and North Star, they're my favourite albums out of the whole Curved Air repertoire.
Well, that's one of my favorite albums as well. I gave it 5 stars. I think it was a fantastic album. I think one of my favorite songs was Time Games, and very Frank Zappa-like, you know, like you got the fusion, brilliant guitar work. Who was the guitar? Who played on the new tracks? Was that Kirby Gregory or was it Kit Morgan? Who was?
It was Kirby played on the album.
Right.
Kit was part of the collaborative creative process, but then he was unwell, and he couldn't carry on. You know, his mood was very low. He was ill, and so we were just ready. We just put down the basic sort of tracks for the feel of, you know, because we also wanted it to be, to be a live performance. You know, not created bit by bit by bit.
Sure.
You know that. You know, no click tracks allowed. I hate them. You know, it's. Mm-hmm. I like music to flow as it's meant to flow. So we had all these. We had the bass, the songs down, and then it was just Kit's guitar. You know, it wasn't really finished. It wasn't up to standard. You know, it was not something that he was proud of or anything. And you know, he just walked away from it all at that point. And so we got Kirby in to, and Kirby said, okay, you know, and so he listened to what had been done, and then he evolved the parts. He took from what Kit had been doing, and created, you know, did things in his own way, which was an interesting thing to do. And then there had to be some adjustments done with the arrangements, just so that everybody else was happy with the way that their parts then fitted with Kirby's parts. It was a very strange way to evolve for parts. You know, you put a new part on, and then you have to change other parts underneath to make it all sit perfectly. Mm-hmm. But it was wonderful to have Kirby back there and to hear that sound again, which is just the same as he has when he was a young boy. I think he was 18 when he played with us in 1973.
Wow.
With Eddie Jobson and all.
Yeah. Kirby's amazing, man. What a guitar player. I mean, I was blown away by this album. And everybody needs to buy this album. Curved Air's North Star. It's available on Amazon. And like I said, I gave it 5 stars. You got a lot of great reviews on that, too, as well.
Yeah.
When I checked, yeah.
Everybody really is very positive about it. Some of them have a couple of rules about the fact that we do some covers and things like that. But that's a long story how that came about. But it's sort of it's. Do you want to hear the story?
Sure.
It was just that we were offered a record deal by Cleopatra Records.
Right.
And which was great. They gave us an advance and all. And then they sent this contract through, and they said, you know, they wanted on this album they wanted to have 3 covers and 3 re-records, you know, and I was completely, you know, I was really against the idea. So what on earth do they want those for? You know, we want to do a whole album of new material. Mm-hmm. You know, we've got enough stuff and everything, but they were adamant that that's what they wanted. And then, so we worked the re-records and the covers. We took them and created them as though they were our own creations. So we did. We got. When I got them so that they felt right for me to sing. We didn't. I chose the songs that I felt were important songs to cover. You know, we did Across the Universe and snow patrols, chasing
cars. Yep.
And the police, spirits in the material world. I think they're important songs. They're good, and it was just in a way a privilege to give one's own pass to them. So we made it work. We made the whole album flow, and then went back to Cleopatra. And they said, "Well, where's Back Street Luv?" And there'd been nothing in this contract that had said we had to do Back Street Luv. This was completely new news to us, and so we paid them back and released it ourselves. Or released it through. I think it was through Cherry Red that it came out. That was our first album, sort of Curved Air Records, by the same label that released Live Atmosphere. But I mean, it was just that was just so bizarre. I mean, they turned down a wonderful album because it didn't have Back Street Luv on it. Why should we do Back Street Luv? And we're a brand new band, and it says it was just crazy what record companies want sometimes, even in this day and age with enlightened ones, which I believe Cleopatra are a very good label with some, they really support artists and stuff. But this was madness.
Yeah. You don't want to do a greatest hits album.
No.
One of my another favorite track, Images and Signs. Was that a new track? Or is that?
Yes.
That's a new track.
New.
Yeah.
That's new. Images and Signs, and most of it is new.
Love it. Oh my goodness, you guys, you just rocked it there. It reminded me of a little bit. Camel, the prog rock band Camel. It sounded a little bit like that kind of orchestration. I loved it. It was awesome. Our keyboard player is brilliant. I mean, Robert Norton, who stepped into Francis Monkman's shoes in sort of keyboard department. I mean, he just covers all that. He has all the different sounds at his disposal, and he's very intuitive with his arrangements and the right chords, the right sound, the right inversion. For everything, I mean, he doesn't write it down. He just feels it, and there are three of us, like Paul and me and Kirby. We don't read music or understand, what all these chords and things are called, And then you get people like Kit and Robert, who, they can talk about all the nuances of all these different inversions and, this flattened fifth, 11th, 7th, whatever, the 13th, which all, I mean, they have different names and stuff, and it's a whole science of its own, whereas Kirby will do stuff, but he won't know what it's called. Neither will Stewart. Right.
Stewart Copeland. He had some basic music stuff, but I mean, he just intuits stuff as well and builds it up empirically. He doesn't know what he's doing at all. Nothing's done according to any preconceived, any formula. It's all just as it needs to be, which is the way I think music should be too.
Sure. I want to make sure the audience knows about what else you got going on. I've noticed on your site you have is it a re-release of the second album, expanded edition from Esteric Recordings, which I think was just re-released, right, in August of this year, which...
Air Conditioning has been re-released.
Okay.
And the first three albums have been remastered by Francis Monkman because he, which makes him happy. It brings him sort of into this, has him working, in these times along with everybody else that we're working with, and we're also doing a Curved Air family album which will come out next year.
Oh, cool! Awesome.
Which has pieces from everybody who's ever worked with us, more or less.
That's
and,
wonderful.
and collaborations. But so yes, the first 3 albums under Aircut.
Mm-hmm.
So Air Conditioning, second album, Phantasmagoria, and Aircut have been remastered and released with bonus tracks and lovely, beautiful packaging and everything. They're CDs, but they're just, it's all beautifully done, and they're being very well received too. And I think they made for Record Store Day, which is a big thing in England. Do you have it in America as well?
Yes, we do.
Record Store Day.
We do have that. Yeah.
They made they've made some more picture discs, like LPs on
Right.
with the original artwork on. So I haven't actually seen the new ones, but it's good that they've got some new ones out which will actually play like properly, because the technology wasn't there when our first picture disc came out. It was just plastic on top of the artwork, and or clear vinyl on top of the artwork, which sort of was a bit staticky. But other than that, the music came through.
I'm baffled when I think about how huge Curved Air should be. It's like, why couldn't they be as big as maybe Emerson, Lake and Palmer, for instance? And it still baffles me today, because you have a tremendous following. If anybody goes on YouTube and checks out all your music, you've got so many people, making comments and liking your videos, and so many views. It's incredible. You got a tremendous following. Why do you think you guys didn't make it commercially, like say in Emerson, Lake and Palmer?
Well, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, they carried on, for many years in one way or another, as far as I know, with that lineup kept going. The same thing with Led Zeppelin. They kept going.
Right.
It's keeping going with the original creators, because every time you when you have the original band, and then you hand the baton to some new people,
mm-hmm.
then they have to earn the respect of everybody else. And so when the Aircut band joined, they were handpicked. They were kids, really talented young. Kirby was 19, Eddie was 17, and it was a brilliant album. But then after a year, they got Roxy Music stole Eddie,
Yep.
and Eddie went very willingly, and because you discover that that people, even with Darryl and Francis, I mean, they just made through nearly 3 years, but they already got burnt out, and they wanted to do their own thing, because it's very difficult to keep people together who are really talented, and because there'll come a point, even with the Police, they made it through 5 years.
Right.
That it's just people will say no. I mean, I want to do my own thing now. It's just kind of, I want to do it my own way. I don't want to have to kind of carry on making the same sound or working with these people, whereas it's all a big love affair at the beginning, and then it's just like a marriage, really.
Sure.
Bands, it's either people are prepared to work on it and see it through for years and years and years, or else it's just a wonderful, flaming, passionate thing, which is very beautiful, but it lasts about the same amount of time as a romantic relationship sort of starts to sort of fade after about 3 years. By 5 years, it's often gone, and 7 years or whatever. Unless it's those the special people who will learn how to love, and well, that's a whole other subject. To keep something going, which is rare but beautiful, or rare in my experience. But yeah, I mean, so I think that was why the bands that are really big who kept going, you know, the Stones, Zeppelin, Renaissance kind of they broke into pieces and came back together again several times, and you know, I think yeah, because Eddie went off, and then there was a gap after the Aircut band. It wasn't really very long, but we got together and did a very successful tour with the original lineup again, but that was basically for financial records, for financial reasons, because we had some taxes to pay as a band, you know. So they booked it's a 3-week tour, it's a 3-week sellout tour in universities, which was, you know, really nice places to play. We were playing to that age group, and then Darryl and I continued, and for me, that last lineup of I mean, Stewart was with us, so that was one good thing, and it was all really, you know, everybody was really good players and things too, but Darryl was already beginning to sort of meddle with what Curved Air was. You know, he was making it more pop and more, you know, the overall sound of the album was only just like one or two tracks on there where Darryl sort of he plays with it, making it sound like, you know, like something from from the first 3 albums, but it's sort of, you know, he was just, and the other musicians were much more sort of bluesy, and, you know, Darryl was having his sort of bluesy poppy moment, and I think that diluted those albums. I mean, they're good albums, and the new material went down very well live because it was mixed in with the old stuff, but it wasn't, you know, I was kind of dragging my heels with that too. It just sort of, you know, it just wasn't going in the right direction. And anyway, I wanted to kind of leave and go and do acting and things like that. And so, you know, when it broke up in 1976, just before punk arrived, you know, it couldn't have been, you know, it was just in time for me, you know, just because I wanted to do other things, and other things were happening in the world too for us to be part of.
Well, were you happy with management and the exposure the band got?
Yeah, I mean, different Miles in the sort of the Darryl era. You know, Miles Copeland, who was Stewart's brother Miles. I mean, we did, you know, they were proper management. We got some of our best coverage from the from the music papers. I mean, there was a lot in the press about us, you know, and I was, they had sort of press polls and things, and I kind of, and I was quite, we were all sort of, you know, they sort of top musicians and top vocalists and things like that, and so we were very popular all the way through. So I think then one thing that happened with Miles was, which wasn't good, was our first album together. I think this is where our sort of the light began to die. Was we all got together, the new band, Darryl and Stewart and Mick Jakes and Phil Cohn then, and we wrote when my friend Norma, who was writing lyrics for me, because I'd just been through a rough time and I couldn't string words together, never mind a song. But Norma and I kind of, you know, I talked to Norma and she sketched out songs, and then I thought, yeah, well, that's a song, and that's not a song, that's a song, so we made some songs, and we went and we recorded it in Island Studios, Basing Street Studios, and we gave it to the whatever label Miles was working with, because he was BTM Records, and I think this was RCA, and they turned it down. This that was the yeah, it was the first one, Midnight Wire. And so Miles got in these Ron and Howie Albert from Muscle Shoals Studio.
Right.
And they came in and they sat. You got to change, all the lyrics on this. You got to. They wanted to make us into a kind of, slick, kind of, I don't know, American kind of whatever a Muscle Shoals type band would be. I mean, like a sort of bluesy, West Coasty. They just wanted it to be all homogeneous, if that's the right word. I mean, it's just the album that we had made was very quirky and very we enjoyed playing it. But when Ron and Howie were working with us, they just kind of took all the kind of fun out of it and just made it very straight, and it's all played. It's very, very polished, and everybody except me, but they liked what I was doing, but everybody else got a hard time. They told Stewart that he needed to practice with a metronome, and Darryl was miserable, because we had having our lovely work that we created. We were so excited about, we were having to kind of water it down. So that was a miserable time. So so that being we did 2 albums together. We did Midnight Wire and then Airborne, and they both, by the time we got to the studio, I don't think that Airborne was, that was kind of everybody sort of at loggerheads over their own particular song. It wasn't really a collaboration. It was just the songwriter produced each song, and so it was what it was, and it worked, and people like the tracks. But so this is why, I mean, it was time to when we finished, when we weren't really doing, apart from playing the old, playing the kind of the best of what had been created up until then, and we weren't playing air-cut stuff then. We were just playing stuff that Darryl had written.
Right.
And or Darryl and Francis had written, but the new stuff just didn't cut it as far as everything else went. So this is why we didn't continue. But if we had, but we couldn't continue because the the main fire kept sort of burning out,
right.
And then we had to, but there were some embers that obviously that we when we got back together again in 1990 we got back together and did with Darryl and Florian and me and Francis, and we did 2 shows which were very, very well received, but there were no press came at all, and it was just 2 shows done. Yeah, and there was no reviews. It was wonderful. We had really, really good light show, Fruit Salad Lights, who were the best people at the time, and the shows went down really well. And then everybody went off in their. We sort of kind of talked about maybe we would carry on, but we didn't. Anyway, I was doing acid folk and things at the time, which that really had me on fire, doing acid folk, and because that was my songs, and
yep.
and my wonderful players who played beautifully freely, and so that was the Curved Air at that point was no competition to acid folk. So anyway, I mean, that answers your question as why we didn't carry on, because then there was a big gap until 2008, and then from then we've been. And in 2008, we couldn't find anybody. We were trying to get publicity then. We were just taking it upon ourselves to just do, go out and do some shows and things. We didn't have big management or anything then. We had. Right. We had somebody helping us out, and then we had somebody else helping us out, and they were trying to get press for us. And it just the people who were in the press offices of the music magazines or whatever. I mean, they probably weren't even, they didn't even know who Curved Air were.
Yeah, that's pretty sad.
But then, but we kept going, and
yeah.
then and as we kept going, the prog, the appetite for prog music was growing, and that beautiful prog magazine, and which is released, which is available all over the world, and then there was prog festivals and big festivals that had progressive music stages, and so it began to flower again. And there are young prog bands, which is exciting, who do. It's very strange. We did a show in Italy, and I listened to lots of the other bands, and they all, you could hear, well, that band sort of sounds like, but like Genesis in this era and that era, and they. And another band, sounded a little bit like King Crimson, and
yep.
or they were the obvious the starting points, influences that had sort of set them off. But I mean that they there are some really we've played several progressive, well, lots of progressive rock festivals now. There's one in Portugal that we do quite regularly, and then the wonderful bands from all over the world. Very creative, truly sort of eclectic, like progressive rock bands always were. I mean, there was no such thing as each progressive rock band was different from. They were all different from each other. You couldn't say that one band, that Genesis wasn't like King Crimson, wasn't like Led Zeppelin.
Exactly. There's a lot of great new prog bands out there. I just interviewed Bruce Sword from the Pineapple Thief. Have you heard of them? The Pineapple Thief.
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing how many have surfaced, and there's a radio station called Moro that is promoting a lot of the new prog rock bands. It's MOROW, and that's all they do is they promote prog rock, and they have the older bands, and they have a lot of the newer bands. So it's cool because you can discover a lot of the new progressive rock bands that are out there. So I'm really happy about that. At least prog rock's making kind of like a comeback, with all the young people.
Yeah, and it's taking its place alongside sort of whatever, there's indie and there's rock and roll and there's reggae, right. And there's, and so, prog rock it had run its course again, in 1976. People didn't want, people were ready for the fresh energy of, yep. Fresh pop energy of punk. But now, it can lead the youngsters on again.
Like, prog rock is all about the Brits. I give the Brits 1,000% credit for inventing progressive rock. I just talked to John Lodge from the Moody Blues, and I was giving the Brits all the credit. And he was saying, that we copied the American rock and roll and this. I said, no, John. Prog rock is you guys. It's in your blood, man. It's in your DNA. It comes back. You can feel the medieval, the British history. You know what I mean? It's all coming through prog rock. It's all a Brit thing, and because that's my favorite music. I love progressive rock. I've always have, and I give the Brits a lot of credit for that.
But I think, at the same time, I mean, like Jerry Goodman and the Flock and the Mahavishnu Orchestra and right. Frank Zappa even, I mean? It's all these people who'd messed up rock music in the right. best sense of the word.
Right.
You know what I mean? They just using what was vaguely, which has a rock, had a beat and things like that, but they added sort of poetry and humor and anarchy and everything,
right.
And all that is all prog as well. It's progressive, whereas you still had the bands who were playing, beautiful straight, the Johnny Winters and the Edgar Winters and all of these people who were playing, they were playing things, but in a particular style. They were being true to a particular kind of canon of work. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I mean, either they were following on from the blues people and things like that. Just it's interesting just how the different threads, from the rock and roll and blues, how it's all worked its way through, and people begin to, I'm a great believer in not following a template, because I think I taught singing at a university in England, and they had a jazz course, and every time they did a recital, it was the most boring thing on the planet, because everybody just sounded like Rent a Jazz Band. You know what I mean?
Right.
They taught them all the different styles from here to there and whatever, but there were, the really great players that came through in that course were the ones who never had any of that learning. They just
Amazing,
did it from their soul.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like a rehearsed band, and then somebody that just goes in there and improvises. I talked to Billy Cobham about the Spectrum album. That was all improvised. And it came out to be an incredible album. And they did it really quickly. So sometimes it's good to have mistakes in music. It sounds good. It sounds better. Here's a question that I ask everybody, and I get some interesting answers. If you had a Field of Dreams wish, like the movie, to perform or collaborate with anyone from the past or present, who would that be?
David Bowie.
David Bowie. Good answer. I don't think I've had an answer from David Bowie yet. It's amazing.
No, well, he's the one person. I mean, I'll never get to meet him now, but I mean, who's real hero of mine.
Right.
The way he kind of used personas and mixed, took influences from different places, and the way he just sort of really went for it. He went right out on a limb personally and everything, and he just was kind of like he really was like the Andy Warhol of pop music.
Yeah, all the way to the end. It's amazing.
Yeah.
All the way when he knew he was going to pass away, he kept it going. He's brilliant. I agree with you. Sonja, we got to wrap this up. We're getting close to that time. I want to thank you so much for being my guest today, especially for all the incredible music you brought to us and continue to bring. Please come to America. When was the last time you've been here? It's been a while, huh?
We haven't played over there for a long time.
Right.
No,
right.
We did the cruise. We did the prog rock cruise.
Right.
A couple of years ago, and so we were briefly in Tampa, Florida. But when I come to America, my son lives in America. One of my sons lives in America. Stewart lives in LA, and but we. So I have reasons to visit sometimes,
right.
but we may be able to come over there. I don't know. We'll have to see. It all depends on promoters being able to put on the right kind of tour.
Sure. Well, Sonja, we love Curved Air. We love you. You were awesome.
Thank you.
The band is great. It's as good as ever, and we just want more music from you guys. Thanks again for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Take care. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
For more information about Curved Air, visit www.curvedair.com or www.facebook.com/curvedair or visit www.sonjakristina.com. And go on their website because they have a lot of great albums that have been remastered. You can purchase the second album, a 2-disc expanded edition from Esteric Recordings. Phantasmagoria album remastered in an expanded edition, 2-disc expanded edition. also from historic recordings. And go on their website to check that out. You can also go on Amazon.com. Very special thanks to Barrick Wickens, manager and tour manager, for arranging this interview with Sonja Kristina, and of course the dynamic duo of Doug and Don Newsom of BBS Radio for making the magic happen for each and every broadcast of the Ray Shasho Show. If you have comments or suggestions for the show, contact me at interviewingthelegends@gmail.com. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Interviewing the Legends with Ray Shasho, for the very latest interviews. It's real news, people. And don't forget to purchase a copy of my book entitled Check the G's, the true story of an eclectic American family and their wacky family business, available now at Amazon.com. You will live it. Have a great week, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to Interviewing the Legends, brought to you by the Publicity Works Agency. Call 941-877-1552 or visit us at publicityworksagency.com, specializing in author and music artist publicity plans. We shine when we make you shine. Tune in to Interviewing the Legends every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Pacific Time on BBS Radio, Station 1.